Our speaker tonight is Dr. Donald Duclos. He is the Assistant Director of the Department of Health Education of the American Medical Association. He has been concerned with public health and health education for 3 decades. Dr. Duclos received his medical and public health education at the University of Minnesota. His experience includes practice as a country doctor, the Director of Health Education in a state health department, and as the Director of the Health Division of a community council. He is a diplomat of the American College of Preventive Medicine and a Fellow of the American Public Health Association and the Society of Public Health Educators. He represents the AMA in the Advisory Committee to the School Health Education Study, the Interprofessional Research Commission on Pupil Personnel Services, and the National Health Council's Committee on Continuing Education. He has been a member and secretary of the Joint Committee on Health Problems and Education of the NEA and AMA, and served as medical studies consultant to both the 1950 and 1960 White House conferences on children and youth. He is also active in the committees of several national organizations concerned with health and health education, and has been awarded the Distinguished Service Award of the American School Health Association. It is with pleasure that I introduce Dr. Duclos.
Dr. Stanley, President Emmons, Dean Burkhardt, ladies and gentlemen, and I am particularly pleased to see such a large group of collegians here who are just beginning, in fact, are well into this process of aging, which we will be discussing this evening. When one is invited to offer the terminal commentary on a conference as important as this Kirkpatrick Workshop on Aging, one asks himself, why? What have I to offer that has not been said 1,000 times, and possibly better? The probability of saying something new, or of putting old concepts in new frames of reference, diminishes when circumstances require these comments to be made without benefit of participation in the sessions that preceded this one. And I have only your conference theme, Reality as I See It, the real world of older people, as my guidepost. In fact, I did see reality today because we left Chicago suburb this morning and spent something over half of our driving time fighting what looked very much like a blizzard on an extremely slippery road with a high wind. And I wasn't so sure I was going to be participating in the real world of older people. I spent about half my years practicing preventive medicine, largely health education. And during these 3 decades or more, I have known many older people. I have, on occasion, been involved in their welfare and health maintenance. Some of my writing and speaking has been about their joys and sorrows, their health and illnesses, economic, social, and occupational interests, and what should or could be done to improve the lives of these older people. But it has been somewhat of a thing apart. I was supposedly an expert that knew all of the answers. That is, I was until last month when our personnel department informed me that before the end of March, I must select the pattern of annuity that I want during my retirement, which can start in a couple of years. You know, it's rather disconcerting to suddenly discover that what up to now has been those old folks is now us old folks. No longer am I an expert on old folks. I am one. In fact, I'm even beginning to agree with the fellow who observed that old age was a welcome and enjoyable experience. If he wasn't old, he'd be dead. My title, Growing Old Gracefully, was selected with a purpose. True gracefulness is an elegance, a beauty in form and action that comes from an experience based on practiced thought and action. It requires as much effort to be an attractive, useful, sociable, and interesting oldster as it once took to be an attractive, useful, sociable, and interested youngster. To make a successful career of the last quarter of one's life, one must work at it at least as hard, and possibly harder, than he worked at other careers in his younger years. Sir William Osler, a very great physician and teacher near the turn of the century, said, "There is a master word which solves all problems. The dull it makes smart, the smart understanding, the young eager, the old tolerant. Though it is a little one, the master word looms large in meaning. It is the open sesame of every portal, the great equalizer in the world, the true philosopher's stone which transmute all base metal of humanity into gold. And the word is work." Even now, in the minds of many people, the problems of aging are phenomena caused by the passage of time. Just to live a given number of years must cause one to be in poor health, poor in money, poor in relations with the world and all of the people in it. And fortunately, this is not so. The AMA's Committee on Aging started as a committee on geriatrics. They soon found the so-called health problems of the elderly were the same health problems that plagued all ages. Heart disease occurs in every age group. Cancer is a leading cause of death among children. What used to be called the communicable diseases of childhood affect grandparents as well. Granted that some older persons are ill, infirm, or physically deteriorated, most of them are not. For example, in 1959, Dr. Ethel Shannis of the University of Chicago surveyed a representative sample of older people to find out how they felt about their own health. She found that, at the most, only 1 in every 5 persons over 65 considered himself sick to a degree which significantly limited his normal activity. But about 2/3 of the persons who were ill said that their illness had interfered in no way with their normal mode of living. In another study of older persons in Wilmington, Delaware, in 1961, 90% of the men and 88% of the women over 60 were found to be in average good health or better. Over half of those interviewed said they had not been confined to bed for illness for even a single day during the preceding year. Though it is true that 81% of all non-institutionalized persons over 65 have some chronic condition, 40% have no limitation, 26% have only partial limitation, and less than 16% are unable to carry on their major activity because of a chronic condition. Now, this term chronic in itself refers only to the duration of a condition. It does not refer to its severity. You know, us old folks are in pretty good health in spite of the health problems attributed to our aging. Another so-called problem of aging is the alleged lack of financial security. Though some are known to be impoverished, older persons show a decidedly favorable financial position when compared to the rest of the population. The University of Michigan Research Center recently showed that the median total assets held by aged spending units were nearly twice as high as those of younger spending units. The Social Security Administration and the Federal Reserve Board have made studies that indicate over 70% of the aged Social Security beneficiary couples own their own homes, and 81% of these are mortgage-free. Income studies by the Census Bureau in 1960 showed families under 65 to have twice the median income of families over 65, but the adjustment for tax and other advantages enjoyed by the aging, together with fewer family members, reveals the annual income per member was only $60 less for older families than for younger families. In addition, older families have less personal debt, less installment debt, and less debt for medical, dental, and hospital services than younger families have. So, with recognized exceptions, we oldsters are quite well off financially. Other studies have been made regarding the educability of older people, their supposed tendency to be insecure, quarrelsome, whining, dependent, their inability to fit into social structures. Most studies show a strong consciousness by older people of their ability to meet their own needs. And in their family life was found solidarity and a fine spirit of mutual aid. Though some were unable to care for themselves, most people interviewed stressed over and over again that we are not ready for the shelf. It is on this basis of observed physical, financial, and social strength that one can plan to continue into the remaining years the aging process he has experienced for 2/3 of a century, with some hope of it being a graceful continuity if he gives it thought and some planning. In a paper before the AMA conferences on aging and long-term care in the winter of 1964-65, Dr. Edward H. Williams outlined 3 ingredients for a fulfillment formula for older people: preparation, positive health, and participation. The first ingredient, preparation, is not so much preparation for aging as it is preparation for living. This is in line with the philosophy of the AMA Committee on Aging, that aging is a continuity from conception to death. The breadth and depth of an individual's interactions with other human beings, his usefulness, the satisfaction he achieves in later years, are all built directly upon the capabilities and potentialities he has developed over the years before. His adjustment to problems as an older person is a reflection of his adjustment to problems as a youth. A man's senior years are not an isolated period with special needs and problems peculiar to that time alone. These years are inevitably and exactly the sum total of what has gone before. This is why we feel that the dramatic extension of life expectancy and health, the revolution in aging, poses a vital and exciting challenge to schools and to educators. For in preparation of our children for their obligations as citizens and social human beings, in fact, for successful living, they are preparing them no less for successful aging. Today's children will need to recognize that aging is a natural process, characterized not by overall decline, but by shifts in abilities and interests. They will need to understand that later years can be a time of continued growth, not in physical agility or endurance, but in wisdom, experience, and intellectual achievement. Positive health, the second ingredient, differs from health alone by meaning a margin of reserve not only against the normal demands of everyday living, but also against the abnormal, the extreme physical and mental stresses that befall all of us at one time or another. This state of maximum preparedness against disease, injury, and stress can be built into the human body through a lifetime program of sound exercise, nutrition, healthful living habits, and full use of all physical and mental capabilities. This factor of use is a basic biological principle. Tissues and functions that are not used atrophy. Yet too many of us believe that a society in which things are easy is conducive to health, and that our health and happiness are in inverse proportion to the amount of effort required for us to live. We are almost afraid to live for fear of dying. So much has been said and written about the harmful aspects of stress that we have an entirely lopsided view of this biological role. It has not been made clear that only the extremes of stress are harmful. Like potent medicine, too much is a poison, but the proper dose can be beneficial and even life-saving. Moderate or graded stress is a prime necessity. The functional capabilities of the body can only be kept at their peak through use. This applies not only to physical, but to mental and social capabilities as well. The final ingredient, participation, as a worker, a family member, and a citizen in the community. It is all very well to achieve and maintain a state of optimum health, but why be healthy? In fact, why live at all? This is a practical question, for continued health requires a reason for being well. Health means not only capabilities, but the opportunity to contribute of these capabilities to the human community. Work provides the primary creative outlet for the contribution of most people. This is why, as physicians, we are so deeply concerned with policies which cause for arbitrary age limits in initial employment and retirement at a given chronological age. Insofar as these arbitrary employment and retirement policies thwart the older person's need to contribute, insofar as they deny him a sense of belonging and self-respect, they are detrimental to his continued health. As a physician, I would plead for a re-examination of our present arbitrary hiring and retiring policies, for I sincerely believe that the problems involved in changing such policies are far less than the problems which will result if we retain them. These three ingredients, preparation, positive health, participation, these are the basics of any formula for getting the most out of living. This business of getting the most out of living is a lifetime experience, and, though it is here applied to older people, applies as well to any age. A variation of the approach is presented in a booklet published by the AMA's Committee on Aging in 1965, entitled How the Older Person Can Get the Most Out of Living. Here, 6 components believed vital to full living are delineated. Regular work is of vital importance to most people, even though they may look forward to a day when their work is done. Some may be in the situation where they can continue on the job they have performed all of their lives, either on a full-time or a part-time basis. Others may want to use retirement to embark on a second career, with or without pay, totally different from previous employment. Whatever form work takes, it should be regular, mentally and physically stimulating, and productive. The majority of older people have the capacity to work, some as vigorously as ever, and others with appropriate modifications. Yet just as thousands do continue to work, other thousands deny themselves the privilege of work simply because they accept compulsory retirement or consider themselves too old. The latter may find it to their advantage to seek full or part-time employment, employ themselves in a craft or skill they enjoy, expand an avocation into remunerative work, or offer voluntary help to the innumerable community organizations and institutions who would welcome their services. Any of these is better than a complete retreat from life. Another point, family life. It is an important part of living. However, too many older people participate in family life as one who seeks special privileges. Because older people may take greater pride in their family than at any other time in life, there is an excellent opportunity to approach as one who can make special contributions. Of course, there are stresses between persons living together, especially when they are of different generations, but these can be controlled if the oldster tries to avoid being domineering, a meddler, a demander for preference, a sympathy seeker, a tedious talker, or a worshiper of the past. In brief, one must avoid the characteristics often associated with great age. Another point, personal living habits. These require special attention. Cleanliness, neatness, and personal grooming are essential for older people as well as others. This is especially true when failure of certain body controls lead to offensive odors which must receive special consideration. Recreation must be considered. Especially when it is different from the daily routine, it becomes refreshing. Some recreation may be with one's family. Other activities may be with one's peers, or even alone. Recreation can give balance to living, provide the sedentary with physical activity, the active with opportunities to relax. A balance in life, the last of this group of this is the fifth one, is productive of a full life and involves a great breadth of interests, things, activities, people. One must balance work with play, family with community, laughter with contemplation, among other things. And last but not least is a continuing self-appraisal. This is basic to the previous 5 components of living. Because older persons tend to underestimate their abilities, it is more important for these senior citizens to look carefully at themselves and to their activities. Questions which might arise during appraisal probably will involve hobbies, modification of activities enjoyed in earlier years, development of life purposes which differ from those of earlier years, exercise tolerance, learning ability and interest in learning, just to mention a few. As a closing thought, it is refreshing to note the transition that has taken place in our attitude toward the older members of our society. As great family homes gave way to small bungalows and apartments, we first asked the question, where can we put them? And putting people out of sight and out of mind was once popular, especially as arteriosclerotic senility began to take its toll. But our beneficence soon caused us to ask, what can we do for them? And there resulted all manner of subsidizations, senior citizen centers, recreational programs, and volunteer activities. Fortunately, our evolution is now heading toward what may be a brighter future for our older generation as we seek to answer 2 more very significant questions. what can they do for themselves, and what can they do for others. Behind all that I have said, and behind all that I am sure transpired during your workshop, is an underlying necessity which surpasses all others, and without which everything becomes as dust and ashes in the mouths of our elder citizens. That is the need for happiness and recognition. Without this, food, shelter, clothing, medical and dental care, essential as these are not enough. The emotional needs of the elderly are exactly the same as those felt by every human being at every age. They may be intensified in the later years, but they are basically the same. They are but two: to be loved and to be needed.